farm about 1,200 acres down in Jackson County. If you ever go down I-90, we farm on north and south side of there. So actually, I'm supposed to talk about how people are setting up their strip till machines and their planters. Along with that, I and Nancy also have a cover crop seed business, so I get to see a lot of people and a lot of different machines, which helps a lot. This is actually our home base right there. Probably should be updated because we added a 64 by 80 shop onto our old shop. But as you can see, the alfalfa. Up until spring of 22, we'd had 1/3 alfalfa, 1/3 corn, and 1/3 soybeans. And we've actually been doing cover crops started back in 2008. And our goal right now is to have a living root in the ground 365 days a year, or as close to it as we can get. As far as strip tilling, I've been strip tilling over 25 years. And the reason I got started is we had a co-op that bought a strip till machine. One of the board members told me, you know, you've got to try this. And I really didn't even know what it was when he told me that. But he took 80 acres and he did his conventional tillage where they broadcast P&K, and then he did half of it strip till. He said 10 bushel an acre difference. So I thought, boy, 10 bushel an acre, I'm looking at that too. So we took one farm and we strip tilled that for corn, took another farm because that's when the co-op also bought a variable rate ag chem floater. And of course they said we can do variable rate, we'll soil test this and we'll put a little more on where you need it, a little less where you don't need it. And so we did that, and we did it for 3 years. And to be honest, yes, we gained about 10 bushel an acre by putting that fertilizer below the row. That was straight rate. They didn't have variable rate at that time on their strip till machines. And we did the variable rate, and we were still doing our chisel plowing, and we were doing our field cultivator in the spring. And to be honest, I was guilty. I'm the guy that had the big four-wheel drive Steiger, the 50-foot field cultivator, and a 10-bottom plow. So it was quite a jump when we switched. And we've been at it ever since. Actually, though, the last 3 years now, we're going 100% no-till corn and beans. I take that back because this year we strip-tilled a couple fields. One is they strip-tilled manure. They ran out before they got the field done, so we did a little strip-tilling on that farm. And we had another farm where we changed directions of the way we planted, and I thought, well, it'll help level it out a little bit. So let's get started. You want to give me the next slide? This is that field where they did the hog manure. It's corn on corn, which I'm not a believer in. But Jeff Calder with the University of Minnesota said, you know, you got enough nitrogen left over after that alfalfa, you should go 2 years of corn. So this happens to be, well, there's two brothers actually. They did their own. They did 5,000 acres of custom work and really worked out quite nice. You'll hear me talk about coulter machines and shank machines. And basically, just what they said. The shank puts it down there at the bottom of the trench. Coulter machines mix it throughout, top to bottom. I've tried both. And to be honest with you, we couldn't really see a difference on the yield monitor. And I always say the yield monitor is what tells the story for them. Let's go on to the next slide. Okay, here's that machine in the field. As you can see, going through, he actually took the shanks off and put it into coulters for spring. And all the applicators that I talk to, if they do spring, they take the shank off. Just too much clods. And I keep a list because people call me and ask me, especially people doing cover crops, you know, who they can get or who they can talk to. I have a list of 21 machines within a 20-mile radius of where I live. And I've done this strip tilling, you know, for 25 years. I've never owned a strip till machine. It's always been guys I've hired, either co-op or different neighbors have got it. And so we've tried different ones, trying to see if one was better than the other. And to be honest, we couldn't tell a difference. So let's go on to the next slide. This happens to be the last strip till machine our co-op had. It was a 24-row John Blue. Did a nice job. Unfortunately, they quit. And I said, why would you quit? I mean, you got a lot of farmers that want to do this. Well, we're out to sell fertilizer. You know how much we can throw on with a floater as compared to strip tilling. Plus, more guys are buying their strip till machines. And I've found this out throughout the country. You'll have a co-op will buy a strip till machine, they'll run it 3, 4, 5 years. and then they'll turn around, sell it, and quit. Just because they want to move fertilizer fast. That's the big thing, I guess. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, here's a soil warrior. This happens to be Matt Henning from Lakefield. His dad was one of the first guys starting that. I asked him, how long have you been strip tilling? He said 23 years. He just got this machine 2 years ago. And he did have a shank machine. He would alternate between shank and coulter. The new machine is all coulter. Cover crops have been spread on here. They're not really growing too much yet, but in the spring, it'll look really good. Let's go on to the next one. This happens to be a pluribus machine. I call it strip till light. It doesn't go quite as deep as what the Soil Warrior will or the Kuhn Krause Gladiator or some of them. He makes it work. So that spring strip till, it's a little bit cloudy. It's quite early though. And Jordan Clausen from Mount Lake, Minnesota, and they cover a lot of acres with that thing. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Okay, here's another one. This is an outfit out of Nebraska. I'm not sure of the name. They are building these on John Deere planter frames, and they're using Dawn row units. And I've had him do work for me. It does a nice job. This is a little bit of corn on corn there. You can see the cover crop in the background there. So let's go on to the next one. Okay, this is spring strip till. A lot of guys are scared of that. I've done it 3 or 4 times over the years since I'm hiring it done. Sometimes you get an early fall or it gets too wet. They do. They'll come back in the spring. You'll notice that cereal rye. That's my weed control. If you've got cereal rye growing, I guarantee you're not going to have any weeds. We've dropped all our pre-emerge herbicides. We haven't used a pre-emerge herbicide for probably 6 or 7 years. So when I come to spring, I want a good stand of cereal rye because it just does that good job. We've found we can control weeds, and we can also control moisture by using cereal rye. Now, granted, it was a mix. I think that mix was turnips, radishes, rape, buckwheat, maybe even a little clover in it. Usually the only thing that makes it through the winter is going to be your cereal rye or winter rye. And works quite well. Now, I will say, in this case, I kind of shot myself in the foot. Since we were busy and everything, and I hire all my spraying done, we got it done, and I thought, well, it's dry enough. It was kind of wet that spring. I think that was probably 2018, maybe. I told them, go ahead and spray it. That was the wrong thing to do because with the strip going through there, it turned some of the root balls on their side, some of them upside down. Didn't get spray coverage on them leaves. We had to come back later to clean it up when they're shot around it. So, and as of now, we're planting 100% green. Years ago, NRCS said you have to kill it so many days before you plant. We found in a wet year, leave that stuff grow. Dry year, different story. Cereal rye takes a lot of moisture. Starting out spring dry, you maybe want to kill it pretty early. Let's go on to the next one. This is big around me. Strip tilling hog manure. This one here happens to be a VTI bar, quite popular with most of the guys, the applicators. It's a colder machine. They're going RTK, going out planting right on the strip. And the big thing with that is they're finding, and actually I use pictures of Randy Wertzman from Rushmore, Minnesota. He was the first guy to strip till manure. Soil Warrior actually built him a special unit for his tanks, and he's wore out 3 sets of tanks, and he's still using the same bar. And I talked to Randy about it. We've become friends over the year. And he said, it's worth 20 bushel an acre. And I said, really, just planting on a strip? Well, that and a cover crop. And I will believe him because several years ago, I and Nancy were invited down to Omaha, Nebraska to a 3-day seminar. Since we'd done test plots and demonstrations plots with the University of Minnesota, they invited us. And what a great time it was. I mean, there was so many seminars, you couldn't get to them all. So we'd split up. And actually, one was on hog manure and cover crops. Well, I think Jackson, Martin, and Nobles County are probably the hog capital in Minnesota because you can step out your door and look any direction and see a hog bar. And so I'm going to that one. It was put on by Michigan State. The first thing they said in that seminar was if you're putting down hog manure without a cover crop, we guarantee you're losing 40 to 60 units of nitrogen, and probably closer to 60 to 80. And the reason for that is you're plowing this in the fall. And of course, you get a few rains probably after that, and it starts going down in profile. Then you get freeze up. Well, here comes spring thaw, starts going down a little further, and maybe get a rain or two before you plant. Then you plant your corn, and that corn root never catches up to all that nitrogen. And cereal rye is such a scavenger of nitrogen. By planting that, even though you're plowing some out, that holds that nitrogen up near the surface. In fact, the University of Minnesota recommends terminating your cereal rye at 8 to 10 inches. That'll be releasing that nitrogen back to the crop starting in 30 days. And likewise, if you're no-tilling and you got a good stand of rye, better get some nitrogen to that fast, because I guarantee you it's all going to be tied up in that rye for 30 days. So let's go on to the next one. Strip till machines. You're going to hear, this happens to be a shank machine. I know the guy. This is actually, I'm trying to say it, made in Mankato, Minnesota. It's an older machine, and that's a shank machine. He has a rolling basket. Let's go on to the next one. They all have row cleaners. Some of the strip till machines around me are using row cleaners, some are not. I personally like the row cleaners because you get a cleaner strip without any residue in it. This one here just kind of floats, a little different design. Seems to work for him quite well. In fact, that was that picture where that was his machine doing that spring strip till for me. So let's go on to the next one. Different machines. Kuhn Krause Gladiator is pretty popular. Of course, Soil Warrior is big in our area. There's other ones too. Them are probably the two most popular. You notice it's got a spring reset. Interesting, these two brothers are farming with their dad. They took the shank off for spring, and he said, we just get too many big clods if we're running a shank in the spring. They're going to put the shank on for fall tillage. And I said, well, what's your reasoning? Well, he said, I like that fertilizer at the bottom of the trench. He said, maybe we'll change our mind. I don't know. Could be. So let's go on to the next one. This is that same machine out of the ground. As you can see, they got a leading cutting coler, got the row cleaners, two of them where the fertilizer's mixed in and a close ring, and they're using rolling baskets. That Kuhn Krause came with chains on a rolling basket. He said we wore them out in the first year. So they took and we put 1 inch round stock in between there, welded it in. He was a little bit nervous that they have some small rocks in there, would that bother? But he said it just hasn't caused any problem at all. So let's go on to the next one. This one here is the oldest operating strip till machine in Jackson County. It's 21 years old, and he's still using it. He said, oh, I've had to replace a bolt or two. It's a shank machine. They used to have a steel roller in the front. He took that off. In fact, I just talked to him yesterday because he said, you know, I noticed where we had a lot of residue, the corn was a little shorter. Where it was bare, the corn was bigger. And I said, yeah, I found that out with my planter. You got to keep that residue out of the way. And he said, I'm going to put, row cleaners on that strip till machine. And it was kind of ironic because his name is Dave Christopher from Okabena, Minnesota, and I've had him do some strip till for me because I wanted to compare machines and everything like that. And we got talking, and it's only a 6-row machine. He's got a Cat tractor on it, and I said, couldn't you have a little bigger machine? Well, he said, it takes a lot of power, and that's not the big Cat tractor. He said, you're pulling 11 to 12 inches deep. And I said, 11 to 12 inches? Well, yeah, that's what Soil Warrior said. And I said, you ain't planting mine that deep. You get down there 4 to 6 inches. That's all the weather co-op is doing and stuff, and it works just fine. And he did, and he said, man, that makes it pull a lot easier. So, they all learn from this. But he was one of the first guys. And the only reason I know that because he said, well, Dave Henning did it 2 years for me, and I thought I'm just going to buy my own. And Dave started 23 years ago, so this machine is 21 years old, still in service. So, all right, let's go on to the next one. Again, Soil Warrior. Notice I got the row cleaners up front. Got the colders that shoot the fertilizer down, 2 coming in back. No rolling basket. That's the big change I see. And I talked to the rep from Soil Warrior. We were fortunate. Right before COVID, the University of Minnesota called us up and said, say we've got a delegation from Hungary coming over. They're going to come into Chicago, go through Wisconsin, And we thought of you because you're doing the cover crops, the strip till and no-till. And could we stop and talk for a little bit? And I said, yeah, I'll even do better than that. I'll invite a few of the neighbors that are doing it. And actually, Perry Cranston brought his soil warrior down, and Jordan Clausen happened to have his high clearance in the area, so we had him there for them guys to look at. We are very fortunate in this country. We've got land-grant universities that are verifying what farmers are doing and doing the research for us. In Hungary, you've got none of that. You want to learn something new, you got to look at YouTube or fly over the United States and talk to people. And they admitted they got problems. Everything is black. Moldboard plowed. They told us only one guy could speak English. They all could speak a little bit, but it took a little bit longer to get the conversation going. But he said, yeah, everything's moldboard plowed. If they get a hard rain, everything's running all over the place. And it was kind of funny because they were talking to the soil warrior representative wanting to know if they could make it narrower. And in Europe, I believe 12 feet is your maximum you can have going down a highway. And as I understood, I talked to the rep after that, they are doing some things to make that happen. So let's go on to the next one. Same machine, Kohler machine. This happened to be Perry Cranston's. You notice they're using the wavy Kohlers, and they have a rolling basket in the back. I've had some guys do it with rolling baskets. I really couldn't tell a lot of difference. They claim springtime probably the rolling basket is better, breaks up them clods a little more. And they all do custom work. Actually, we've got two people, father and two sons is one. Land around us is sky high and higher. And he said they would like to do some farming, but how am I going to expand for them? Land's running $20,000 an acre in our area. So they took a strip till machine and turned it into a business. In fact, it got to be so good, they're trying to talk other people into buying a strip till machine because they can't get it all done. So about 3,000 to 5,000 acres custom work is all they can get done in a year. Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is typically me, what I've been doing since I don't know when. No-till drilling and strip-till corn. You'll notice the cereal rye. You don't even see the corn stalks in there. And you don't see a weed out there. And let's go on to the next one. This happened to be, I believe it was 2019. Old 7000 planter. Got the precision up and down air pressure. It's got electric drive on it. Got the row cleaners. It was so wet that spring, I just let that cereal rye grow. In fact, you couldn't hardly tell where the strips were. Luckily, we had guidance and we had the pattern. Once you went through, of course, behind it, you can see that. And did quite well. The only bad part was in 2019, I had back surgery. I had a cyst on my spine. They took that off and fused 3 vertebrae. And of course, filling seed boxes didn't work so good. And Nancy said, if you're going to stay in this game, you better get a center fill planter and you better get a seed tender. And I thought, wow, Nancy's telling me to spend money. And it worked. Let's go on to the next one. This is that planter, 1631, 1790 planter. It's actually right now I'm planting beans. You'll notice I've got the row cleaners on it. I bought them used. They're Martin floating shark tooth row cleaners. And Jordan Clausen said, you're going to put the air cylinders on there, aren't you? And I said, well, I don't know. Think I need to? And he said, well, you still got to adjust them. You had back surgery. You know dang good and well you're not going to get off and adjust them all the time. He said, you tight ass anyway. Spend the money and do it from the cab. I'm glad I did. It does make quite a difference. I'm only using one spike closing wheel. I don't know. I've tried it. On the other planter, I had some with both spikes. The one seemed to be enough. I do like drag chains. It's a very cheap, what do you want to say, insurance? We had this happen because starting about 20 years ago, we were no-tilling into alfalfa that was terminated. No-till alfalfa. Neighbor had bought the new John Deere planter with a downforce. And of course, it was pretty sticky that spring, and all the strips were sticky yet. And the guy I was hiring, I said, I bet we could plant that alfalfa field. Because all that root system in there will carry the planter all right. We did. It planted just beautiful. Closed the seed trench up. Well, then it turned hot and dry. And oh man, it opened that seed trench up. And then of course, the corn sprouted. Well, if I'd try and drag it, get a little dirt in that seed trench, I'd probably break off the growing point. So we left it. It still went 200 bushel corn. But I know my precision guy said, put some drag chains on. He said they're cheap. They just cover up a lot of your mistakes when you're not doing it properly. Like we're always rushing things, sometimes out there when we shouldn't be. So it worked quite well. I actually took the drag chains off my old planter when I sold it, so I had to buy 16 new ones. They're much better than my old ones. So let's go on to the other slide. And then another thing is, okay, you got these strips. What happens in that low area where the water sat? And this happened to be my dad's farm, and of course my dad didn't like spending money. He liked a rent check. Need more tile. What am I going to do here, you know? So another relative had this rotary hoe. I said, you still got that? Yeah. I said, could I rent it? I'm not going to buy a special strip freshener. Go out there with a rotary hoe. Go through that wet spot, turn around, come back. Sometimes 3 hours later, we'd be planting. If it was really bad, next day we'd plant. 18 and 19 taught us a real lesson down there. One is the cover crops really soak up a lot of moisture. I actually have a slide I use in some of my presentations back from 2013. The watershed came to me and said, look, we'll pay for it. Would you do half a field of soybeans and a half a field of corn with cover crops? And I said, yeah, I'll do that. We flew it on. Of course, it didn't rain. We were in a drought in 2012. Here comes 2013, and it's wet. I mean wet. And the one field where the cover crop was on half and the other half didn't, I got it planted, I mudded it in, started raining again. For the next 30 days, I'd call a co-op, hey, you gotta spray that. We can't spray this. And the cereal rye that was growing on one half of it was actually starting to head out. We ended up spraying it twice with Roundup to get rid of it. Well, here comes the combine. And Nancy normally runs our combine, and she is a stickler about getting that calibrated. But she had to take her mother to the doctor that day, so I'm opening the field, and first thing I noticed is the half that didn't have cereal rye, I had water hemp, I had lamb's quarters, you name it. Of course, it was Roundup corn, you know. I'm thinking, God, I got to put up with that mess next year for soybeans. But where I hit where the cereal rye was, perfectly clean. There was nothing there. So then I'm combining it. One of the guys brought a semi out, jumped in the combine, and I said, look at that, weeds over there? No weeds. We're going to be using this cover crop as a herbicide. And we made another round because it was kind of a short field there, or short rows, and I was telling him, looking at that, you know, and I said, look at how clean this is. And he says, you better look up at your yield monitor. It just jumped 25 bushel an acre. And it did. It was consistent for the rest of that field. And I'm scratching my head, okay, what's going on? It's the same number of corn, same amount of fertilizer, same herbicide. The only difference is this half had cereal rye, the other half didn't. And by the end of that field, I kind of figured it out because I'd been watching it all spring. The half that didn't have the cover crop was pretty yellow because we weren't getting in there to get our side dress nitrogen on. The other half was a darker green. Well, what happened is that cereal rye, even though it was a very poor stand, sucked up a lot of moisture, got that corn growing. Yes, the other half was growing, but it was pretty near drowning out. And so that's why I want to have that cereal rye in there every spring, not only for my weed control, but I can control my moisture. So let's go on to the next one. Again, this is my planter a little closer up. You can see I have the shark tooth. I do like them. Them are Yetter closing wheel on one side and the old style drag chain that I took off my other planter. I found out that's not always so good. You turn on the end sometimes, that chain can flip up and hook on one of them little knobs there on that spike closing wheel. There you're plowing dirt. So we put a TV camera out the back of our planter. And of course I turn around and look at the TV camera and go, up, nice and clean. Oh, there's one I've got plowing a little bit of a trench. Got to get off and dole it out. I might change them out. Let's go on to the next one. This is the one from Precision. These are made, they can't flip. They'll go up so high and then they bite. I'll probably put them on the other ones too and sell my other ones out. So, works quite well. I highly recommend drag chains, whether you think you need them or not. Like I say, I found out the hard way they cover up some of our mistakes. Just grabs a little bit of dirt here and there and kind of puts it over the trench. So let's go on to the next one. I also put the serrated blades on. Now these are about due to be changed. This is the third year. I like them because all of a sudden it makes it an international planter. One disc is larger than the other one, so you have a leading edge. It's not the ones that, like John Deere, you got to always take the paper, you know, make sure they're good and tight. If you do by chance put them on, I guarantee you get a good heavy set of leather gloves because they are razor sharp, and that's a voice of experience. They'll cut you real easy. Really like them because when we get into no-till beans, we just raise the row cleaners up, take off at an angle, does a nice job. So let's go on to the next one. This is one of my neighbors, and I looked at that and I said, well, how do you like them? Well, he said, I actually put on the shark tooth. I thought it was too aggressive. And it's kind of interesting because him and his brother just got their first strip till machine in 2019, and his brother came up one day on a side-by-side. I happened to be out by the shop doing something because it rained. I was checking things on a planter, and he said, you know, we've watched you for over 20 years doing that strip till, and then I finally got a strip till machine. I don't know why we did not try this sooner. He said, everything we strip tilled, we can go out and plant. Where we chisel plowed, it's just mush, 8 to 10 inches deep. We can't get in there to work it. And anyway, I was asking about this. Well, he said this is more like a rotary hoe. Doesn't move it so much. I don't know. Whatever works, I guess. That's a big thing. So let's go on to the next one. Again, this is the International. This is Matt Henning, the one that he had the Soil Warrior with the Cat tractor on it. They've got the shark tooth on it with the air cylinders. Pretty much precision everything. Meters, electric drives. Let's go on to the next one. They've even got the closing, air adjustable. Does a nice job, I will say that. He's, like I say, he's been doing it 23 years strip till. He is now starting to try no-till soybeans with his planter. And he said, well, that's a lot of wear and tear on my equipment I don't need, I guess. So let's go on to the next one. Remember I showed you the oldest running strip till machine. Kind of a story behind this. This is Dave Christopher, John Deere 7200. He had this Martin spike closing wheels, the steel ones. He went to the Schlegel spade type. He said it's not quite as aggressive. Of course, he's got his grade chains. Dave came and did planting our soybeans for us in a demonstration plot for the University of Minnesota. That's been several years ago. And we did corn and beans. We had covers growing, and they demonstrated a strip till machine there and everything. And they wanted 30-inch rows. I said, well, my drill is either 15 or 7.5. I don't have bean plate for that L7000 planter. Well, can't you hire a neighbor or something? We'll pay it. So I called Dave up, and I said, Dave, would you want to do it? Well, he said, I just cleaned the planter out. But he said, I don't have a no-till machine. I said, well, you got row cleaners, don't you? Oh, I got row cleaners, I got spike closing wheels, and I got drag chains. I said, bring it over. The most we'll have to do is tighten down your pressure springs. So Dave came over, and it's probably twice the length of this building that he planted down there, and pretty soon he's off the tractor, and I thought, oh crap, we got to go tighten the tension springs. And so I walked down there, and he's down there digging, and I said, well, what are you seeing, Dave? Well, really nothing. He said, I'm at the right seed depth, I got good spacing, it's closed it up nice. I said, well, that's good. Well, he says, it makes me wonder why I'm strip tilling for my soybeans. I said, well, I don't know, it takes a lot of fuel, wear and tear on your machine. Well, next year, that fall, he did half strip till on his beans. Next year, all no-till beans. And I said, what made you switch? The yield monitor? He said there was no difference in yield from the strip tilled beans to the ones he just went out and planted. Been still planting with that 7200 John Deere. And part of it is, I think, because he's using cover crops. Dave started using cover crops about the same time I did, maybe even a year earlier, back in 2007-8, and I've been doing covers ever since that. Interesting, he's got his insecticide and herbicide boxes off of there. And I remember, I don't know, was that right before COVID, Mark, that we had it over by Marshall? And of course, I'm helping with it. They got demonstrations and stuff. And a couple of guys from the coalition were standing there talking about a neighbor who just bought a planter. And I don't know, it wasn't a brand new one, you know, it was a used planter. It must not have been too big an operator. And one guy says, well, has he got insecticide and herbicide boxes? Oh, yeah. Well, then he can no-till. And I'm kind of scratching my head, and I'm thinking, well, how does insecticide and herbicide boxes on a planter affect no-till? So I asked. Well, he said, you got a water softener, don't you? I said, yeah. Just go to town, buy bags of salt, dump them in there, or set the bags in there, plant your no-till, take them out, and use them in the softener. Whatever works, I guess. Very cheap way of doing it. So let's go on to the next one. This happens to be that same 7200 planter. There's the steel Martin clearance wheels or trash wheels up there. He admitted they're pretty aggressive. He said, I've got to watch it and adjust them up and down. It ain't the worst thing in the world. But that's what he had on the rear too, and he said that is just too aggressive in moist soil. It'll actually throw the seed out sometimes. So let's go on to the next one. Row cleaners. This happens to be, I see these, just a single floating row cleaner. I see them on a lot of Kinseys. I don't know if that's Kinsey's patent or whatever. It's a single one, you know, it just drops down to where disc gets solid, and that's where it runs, floats along. And everybody that's got them seems to be happy. So let's go on to the next one. This one kind of caught me off guard. It's my neighbor, and I'm over there, and we're talking, and Dave has two planters. He's got a Kinsey for his corn, and then he's got a 1224 for his soybeans. And I'm standing there looking at this, and I said, Dave, what's going on here? Here I see two of them with spike closing wheels, some with smooth. Over there's two more, over here's a couple more. Oh, he said, that's wheel tracks. It closes better with them spikes. He said, I probably should put it on the rest of it, but he said, when the beans come up, it all looks pretty good. And he said, I didn't spend a lot of money. Okay. Just whatever worked for you, I guess. And I guarantee you, you talk to guys with strip till machines, everyone's going to have something a little different. Same with planters. In general, most of them are using row cleaners, both planters and strip till machines, although I see some where they're not. And same way with rolling baskets. I see 2, 3, 4 of them have rolling baskets, some of them don't have any. So I guess a lot of it would depend too if you're doing corn on corn with strip till. I think you rolling baskets you might get a few more clouds with corn on corn, I'm not sure. So let's go on to the next one. That's the end. So everything you ever needed to know? Probably not. But you get different ideas of what works and doesn't work. And of course, that's why we have Minnesota Soil Health Coalition, so you can get together with a bunch of guys that are doing different things. I know I get people that call me and I tell them, well, I'm not doing this, but maybe you should talk to so-and-so. They've done this for several years, so you know, we can go from there. Thank you.